Gulf International Forum is pleased to publish our second book titled The Dilemma of Security and Defense in the Gulf Region, edited by myself and Dr. Khaled Al-Jaber. We chose security and defense as our topic as it is one of the core research themes for GIF. And more importantly, security is a centrifugal force in defining the current geopolitical context of the Gulf region. For a variety of contributing factors, the Gulf states are facing a conflict of interest between the maintenance of regional security and the preservation of national security interests. This dilemma stems from the perceived decline of U.S. influence and the lingering consequences of the Arab Spring movements. Divisions and armed conflicts, both within the Gulf itself and the surrounding region, are a result of this changing political order, along with the ascension of many of the Gulf states on the international scene. In light of these evolving dynamics, there will be various defense and security consequences for the Gulf and the greater Middle East. These issues are addressed in this edited volume at the national, regional, and international level. It also contextualizes the security environment through a historical overview and deconstructs changing paradigms of Gulf security. With contributions from practitioners as well as academics from the Gulf and the US, this book is a vital resource for both researchers and policymakers.
So my chapter deals with the changing regional dynamics in the Gulf, specifically since June 2017 and the start of the Gulf crisis. So it looks particularly at three new dynamics that we're seeing in the Gulf. The first is about this kind of more assertive form of nationalism that we're seeing throughout the Gulf states. The second, relatedly, is looking at the new generation of leadership in the Gulf states. And the third is kind of the way that the Gulf states look at political Islam and how they've reacted and how that's changed regional dynamics.
So the chapter uses the Gulf crisis, the current diplomatic crisis within the GCC, as an illustration that there is a need to rethink the paradigm of Gulf security, in that Gulf leaders usually prioritize the political and military aspects of security, while their policies end up not all the time, but many times taking a toll on human-based aspects of security.
In my chapter, I discuss the growing assertiveness of the smaller Gulf Arab states and the UAE in particular. This is a particularly interesting dynamic to watch at the moment. It has gained in activity since 2011, since the outbreak of the Arab Spring. And it has the potential to fundamentally alter the security dynamics of the region and to make decision-making amongst the GCC states particularly complicated.
I wrote on GCC military integration. Lately, this has been a subject of great interest. The United States has been pushing what's called the Middle East Security Alliance, which will consist of the GCC plus some other states, currently Iraq and Jordan. This started around the time of the 2017 Riyadh conference. It has since sort of waxed and waned in importance, and in my paper I discuss the reasons why this is a viable interest and the factors that mitigate against it. Ultimately, I conclude that the changing nature of warfare means that relatively small countries, such as the GCC states, have no choice but to operate in a closer coordinated manner.
My chapter, I think, takes a somewhat different perspective on the issue of Gulf security, which is to look at that issue from the point of view of the public opinion in the different countries in the Gulf, rather than government policies or official statements or media. Well, I found that there are some very interesting and sometimes surprising results. One of them is that on many issues, especially when it comes to Iran and Hezbollah, there is great agreement between the governments and the people.
I wrote a chapter about the relations between the Gulf states and Iran. And particularly the thesis of the chapter is that there are significant divisions among the Gulf states between those who believe that it's better to negotiate with the Islamic Republic and have consistent ties with the Islamic Republic, and those who believe it's better to be confrontational.
My chapter deals specifically with the issues related to the civil war in Yemen and the intervention by outside powers, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and of course what the implications are for achieving a peaceful solution to the Yemen conflict, and also to address the future of Yemen, its relationships with its neighbors, and more broadly in the region.
Many accounts of civil wars in the Middle East focus on the proxy dynamics between the regional actors, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, and Israel, and what impact they have had on the civil wars in Syria, Yemen, Libya, and Iraq. My chapter turns the table a bit and acknowledges the proxy dynamics, but looks at how the civil wars in the Middle East have shaped and are continuing to shape the region, the broader region, the Arab political order, and more specifically, the Gulf political order.
So my book chapter is on Turkey's security and defense relations with the Gulf. So I mainly focus on Turkey's changing foreign policy and new orientation towards hard security. And I employ practical geopolitical reasoning to explain the changing Turkish foreign policy behavior towards the Gulf.
I believe that American goals in the Gulf are often the same, but the emphasis given to different goals is different. So right now, for example, there's a good deal of emphasis on countering Iran, whereas at other times there's been a good deal of emphasis on promoting democracy or defending allies or protecting the free flow of oil. But all of those things are American goals in the Gulf.